Welcome to Analyzing Finance with Nick. This video is the second part of my solutions to the video I did on moral degeneracy being popular because it's affordable. And a general thesis on that one was that our society, due to the cost of vices going down relative to inflation and virtuous activities going up relative to inflation, has incentivized people to have more morally degenerate or non-traditional lifestyles over more traditional lifestyles due to economic incentives. I did a video previously about how to encourage more virtuous behavior through economic policy measures. And this one, I'm going to try to do the same thing, but instead of the virtues, focusing on how to reduce vices. I think that for most vices, whether it's recreational use, medicinal substances, whether it is adult entertainment, whether it is gambling or any of the other vices, video games, you can't really solve it by banning it. It's not eliminating the supply or reducing the supply does not kill the demand. What needs to be done is cutting the demand. That is where the solutions are going to be for this. Like, we've had years of a war on drugs, which the goal was to basically punish dealers, punish traffickers of bringing in the substances, but people will keep trying because it will be profitable to do it because the demand is still there. People have too much of a demand in American society, and I think in most of the West, of getting high as a means to escape. And there are a variety of ways in doing that. And if you don't kill that demand, you're not going to really fix the problem. Probably why the demand is so high because it's relatively cheap versus other forms of more productive things to do with your life that are more enjoyable in the long run. So the question really isn't how, if we don't ban things, and again, since Caesar Augustus's times, that hasn't really worked. How do we solve the problem of excessive vice? All right, there's a few ways you go about doing this. And some of them, even if they fail, may have other fringe benefits if they succeed. One of them is through higher taxation of vices, or taxation of vices that really are not even taxed. Like an example would be of like online adult entertainment. It's mostly freely accessible to anybody with an internet connection. And let's just say, for hypothetical sake, there's 100 million men who consume that stuff all over the Western world every day. However, what if they just had a minimum subscription price of $50 a month with all those proceeds going to the federal government as a disincentive for demand for that, for using your time for that kind of content? So that it would work either way. If it succeeds, you'll have less people wasting their lives away, less young men wasting their times away on adult entertainment. And I have to be very careful with the wording because YouTube doesn't like going too far on these kind of things. So that's why I'm kind of talking in a lot of weird synonyms here. But when it comes to the other side, let's say everybody can't kick their habit and people are still doing it, and even though they're paying the $50 a month. Well, then in the US case, you have 100 million men paying $50 a month, and that adds up to an extra $5 billion in tax revenue for the federal government every month. And $60 billion is not a lot in terms of the total government budget, but if you have $1 trillion deficit, that's 6% of the deficit gone that could be used to paying down the debt. Or if, let's just say, we live in a fantasy land where we have a more balanced budget in the government, that increased vice tax just from this one form of entertainment can be used to reduce income taxes or reduce property taxes or reduce taxes in other parts of the economy. Like, let's just say if we want to reward employment, we just reduce payroll tax or social security tax. And therefore, it will be a lot more productive, especially in after-tax income, to work than it would be to sit on your computer and consume adult entertainment. And that's only one of the things. You could do this kind of policy with any other vice. And that was one of the reasons that people wanted to legalize cannabis, because you could get tax revenue from it. However, if they're not get the tax revenues clearly not high enough because demand has gone up. And so if you need to make the price more prohibitive. The main risk is that black markets develop. And then the black markets were just as bad as if it was illegal for any of this stuff. That's the main risk here. I can't assess the probability for each type of vice, the odds of a black market popping up are, and how much the cost of enforcing the black market would impact this. That's something like a social scientist or a welfare economist would be better at talking about than me. But if any of those people who do know more about this kind of thing are listening and would like to have a conversation about it, please feel free to reach out. I'd love to talk about it. But that's one thing. Another example would be for gambling. There's an admission fee to casinos or a minimum subscription that people have to pay to be part of an online casino. An example of where this works successfully is when the Marina Bay Sands in Singapore. I remember when I lived there, if you were a foreigner, you could show your passport and you could go to the casino for free. However, if you were a Singaporean local, you would have to pay, I think it's about 75 US, maybe it's now like 120 something USD, to enter the casino. So it's the equivalent of like a fancy night out. And that's before you play any games. You have to pay that just to get in the door. If you want to reduce gambling, that's the way to do it. The other really downside to a lot of putting these gates on various vice products is that the vendors who sell these type of goods and services are going to be a heavy lobby to not want this to be passed, because their profits are going to go down due to less demand. So that's the main political barrier to such a policy solution. But if you want to reduce demand, you tax and raise the price of it. It's the same thing that you get a lot of conservative Republicans claim, if you raise taxes on productive activities in the economy, you get less of it. Okay, so why don't we apply that logic to unproductive vices, where you can generate more tax revenue and have a more morally adjusted society without outright banning stuff. If it's something that people truly want, they should have the freedom to get it, but they should have to pay a higher price for it to compensate for the social damage of not really that individual pursuing that thing, but a collective enough of a minimum amount of people who pursue those vices, and the inevitable amount of collateral damage that comes from it is collectively paid for through higher vice taxes. That is, I think, the solution really to disincentivizing vices. There also can have education, is being more aware of like the long-term negative consequences of pursuing this type of behavior, or you can just make it more public. That's the other way, is just transparency. Like anybody, if you say, for example, go to a casino more than once a month, you're on some public list of a perpetual gambler. And if you don't want to be associated with the list of perpetual gamblers, and you can apply this to any other thing. Like say you go and you buy liquor more than 2 times a day, then you could be put on a list of people who buy liquor more than 2 times a day. And if there is any social shame in that, it would disincentivize people to pursue these vices. It's like put on a list and you publish it on some government direct website on the internet. I think that's kind of a violation of privacy. So I personally prefer the taxation method of solution than putting people on a list. However, that would, the shame of being on some sort of blacklist for being a degenerate in a certain category may be enough to disincentivize people to pursue such a behavior. I mean, people say, the fact that we encourage things in our culture and media as good things that encourage people to want to do them or they're cool. You make it uncool by being on some embarrassing list on the internet and have the same effect. For media people to create media with more positive images, but the thing is that people have to demand media with more positive images. That's not really a policy solution. The problem is not entirely just that we have some evil-minded Hollywood executives who want to morally debase the public. No, I think that there's actual supply and demand dynamics, and people maybe want that kind of thing. And so that's why people make that content, because it appeals to the lowest common denominator of society. You have to raise the lowest common denominator of society, and maybe for some way or another, it could be through education on a more positive side, or it could be just more through blunt shame, like the list thing, or through making it cost prohibitive, as in higher taxes for vices. Or you can even do it that maybe some of these things are okay in moderation, but you have an extra tax if it's above a certain amount. Maybe use the example for video games. Say that you can play 40 hours a week of your video game console with no penalty. But if you play more than 40 hours a week, you gotta pay an extra $5 an hour you play above 40 hours a week. There's a lot of creative ways you can go with this kind of thing, is the point I'm making. And this is just more of an open discussion. I'm not an expert in social policy, but I do know about economics and how incentives work, and I want to try to translate that to fixing maybe some of these social issues. If you have any thoughts about some ideas that are kind of a branch from these half-baked proposals I've talked about in this video, or have alternative ideas, or see the flaws in the system that I'm proposing here potentially as a solution to the vice problem, let me know. If you like the type of content, feel free to like and subscribe and share with your friends. Thank you for watching.